Assessment is one, if not the most important part of teaching, since it serves as the primary source of evidence within the learning process. Being such a critical aspect of pedagogy, it has been thoroughly studied and analyzed to deepen its understanding, as well as its complexity. This last aspect can make it particularly hard for educators to manage evaluations, since having its different dimensions in mind when evaluating can become overwhelming. On a personal level, three particular characteristics of assessment can be relatively easy to understand, but when it comes to applying them, they are quite tricky to manage. These aspects are fairness, validity, and reliability, which on their own are quite straightforward to grasp and apply. However, the relationship between these three aspects and the way in which they affect each other is where the main challenge for assessment and evaluation lies. During the length of this video, a short definition of the aforementioned characteristics will be given, followed by the challenges one might face when taking them into account. Secondly, an explanation of how they work together will be presented, finishing with some recommendations to overcome the exposed challenges. This is intended to illustrate the complexities of assessment and the challenges teachers must overcome when evaluating. Firstly, fairness refers to the opportunities of learning students have access to, taking into account the social context of the students. This is also related to the instances provided by the teacher, in which they should be open about how students will be evaluated, detailing the criteria to be met as well as the scoring system. Here is where one challenge arises. Since finding the balance between the context of the students and the manner in which they will be assessed requires a process of reflection, where the teacher should think about what assessment instrument is a better fit for the student's personal and curricular requirements. This last point is related to the next topic to be tackled, validity. Validity entails the way the assessment instrument measures the intended criteria, which can also prove to be a difficult task. For this, a clear alignment between the curriculum and the assessment instrument is crucial. Additionally, it must represent the portion of content that was taught during the period that is being evaluated. For example, one must not assess the present perfect tense if only the present simple tense was explained during classes. This logic can also be extrapolated to the skills that were being worked on. For example, the teacher cannot expect the students to excel in speaking if the only abilities that were tackled were receptive ones. In the end, validity is there to ensure an alignment with the objectives, and this, in turn, creates a reliable instrument, which connects with the following point. Reliability in assessment is essentially how consistent an instrument is. This consistency can show itself within the evaluation, meaning that all items or criteria of the tool are correctly aligned. This internal consistency can be challenging to achieve, particularly if what is being evaluated is a range of pieces of knowledge or skills. This can also be perceived in a more external nature, through the application of another version of the instrument in order to see if the alternative can produce the same results. This, of course, relates to the evaluation process as well, since a reliable assessment tool that is graded by two different teachers should provide similar results. This particular aspect may prove the most challenging characteristic of assessment, since the creation of assessment tools is usually one of the key processes of any course. While on its own, this aspect of assessment is difficult to manage, the three aforementioned aspects never work on their own, and a balanced unison is required for an assessment process to be successful. All three of the aforementioned characteristics of assessment have a direct impact on each other and work together to ensure the creation of an appropriate evaluation instrument that fits the student's skills and needs, the context, and the outcomes to be evaluated. The following example is useful to illustrate this point. Imagine a class in which the teacher presents the following evaluation, an oral presentation, for example. The teacher's manner of assessment is fair because they explain the rubric thoroughly, leaving room for questions from the students. It is also valid because the criteria are connected to what was seen in class. Finally, it is reliable because the scoring is consistent throughout the criteria. Having all of this in mind, the main challenge regarding assessment lies in finding the balance between these three elements. To mitigate this, some recommendations are to leave as little up to interpretation as possible, as well as making the given tool align with the success criteria of the course, taking into consideration consistency within the instrument itself. Through a process of deep reflection, I have come to the conclusion that to ensure all of these are working in unison, the use of a thorough planning model, such as a test blueprint, for example, is imperative. In turn, this guarantees a fair, valid, reliable, and overall well rounded evaluation process.